The original Harvest Moon is actually a Japanese game known as Bokujo Monogatari. It's a long-running farm simulation series that was first released by Victor Interactive Software in 1996. In 2003, the company was acquired by Marvelous Entertainment Inc., which continues to develop the Bokujo Monogatari series to this day. From 1996 until 2013, Natsume Inc. handled the North American localization of the farming series under the brand name Harvest Moon. However, in 2014, Marvelous, the developers, announced that their latest installment of the series would be localized by Xseed Games, an American publishing subsidiary of their company, moving their business in-house instead of outsourcing to Natsume. Since neither Marvelous nor Xseed Games own the rights to the Harvest Moon brand name, they continued publishing the Bokujo Monogatari series under the new name Story of Seasons. Meanwhile, Natsume, the original company that localized the games for the North American market, still held the rights to the Harvest Moon trademark. They began developing their own farm simulation games using that trademark in 2013, and in 2014 they released their first installment of the Harvest Moon series called Harvest Moon: The Lost Valley. For longtime fans of the Bokujo Monogatari games, Story of Seasons is the continuation of the Harvest Moon series. Harvest Moon: The Lost Valley and subsequently titled games released post-2014 are part of the revitalization of the Harvest Moon brand developed by Natsume. Natsume's new vision for the Harvest Moon series diverges greatly from Marvelous's Story of Seasons in terms of mechanics, features, story, and art style. I commend Natsume greatly for some of the new ideas they bring to the series. Unfortunately, poor implementation of mechanics, incomplete features, frustrating controls, and slow gameplay impede my enjoyment of the series. Farming is the most important aspect of any Harvest Moon game. In fact, a good chunk of a player's time interacting with the series should be spent tilling, planting, watering, and harvesting crops. After all, that is the name of the game, so it goes without saying that tending crops should be enjoyable, or at least rewarding. Part of what makes farming rewarding is the revenue generated from shipping crops. At the beginning of each game, players start with a destitute plot of land and little resources. Selling crops helps players gain enough money and resources to improve their farms. In the early part of the game, shipping crops is the most lucrative job. As players expand and diversify their crops, selling produce should still remain one of the, if not the most lucrative revenue stream in the later parts of the game. This directly feeds into the fun factor of farming. What makes farming enjoyable is the satisfaction derived from increasing crop profit yields through tool upgrades, land expansion, producing high-quality crops, and unlocking new seeds. In Harvest Moon: Friends of Mineral Town, watering a 3x3 plot of land with a copper watering can takes approximately 12 seconds. The upgraded silver watering can covers the same section of land in about 4 seconds, meaning that I can water 3 times as many crops while using less stamina and ultimately earning more money. Typically, Harvest Moon games start slow. However, as you upgrade your land and tools, you'll be able to get a substantial amount of farming done in a relative short amount of time. This leads into Harvest Moon: The Lost Valley's first shortcoming. There is no rewarding farm progression. The Lost Valley entirely eradicates tool upgrades in favor of simplifying tool selection. In previous games, players had to juggle various tools in order to complete farm work. The Lost Valley simplifies this process by using context-sensitive controls in addition to mapping certain actions to certain buttons. The system is a nice addition, but is no replacement for the rewarding tool upgrade system seen in previous entries in the series. For example, it takes approximately 20 seconds to water a 3x3 plot of land. That time will never improve. This means that at the start of the Lost Valley, the limit is already set for the number of crops I can till, plant, water, and harvest per day with no means to efficiently improve my profit yields or time spent tending my fields. Farm work truly becomes a chore because I am not adequately rewarded for the time and effort I put into my crops. Simply put, farming is not fun. Abysmal profit yields amplify this issue. For instance, 1 green pepper seed costs 20 gold. Newly harvested green peppers can be sold to Sam at a rate of 21 gold per green pepper for a total profit of 1 gold. with animals and buildings costing upwards of the tens of thousands of dollars, selling crops for pennies at a time makes achieving that goal seem impossible. As a player, I am appalled at this prospect. But all hope is not lost yet. There is the option to increase profit yields by either creating higher quality produce or discovering mutations. However, each of these methods come with their own set of problems. Obtaining higher quality crops require you to spend limited money and resources on fertilizer, of which there are several different kinds of each with their own benefits. The problem I had while playing was that after I finally acquired some fertilizer, I would accidentally waste it due to the context-sensitive controls. When I am near a piece of tilled land, I'll be prompted to plant, water, fertilize, and harvest in that sequential order. Oftentimes when I want to water a plant, I would instead use fertilizer on a plant next to it because my character happened to not be squarely aligned with the plot of land I intended to interact with. Not only did I waste a lot of fertilizer, but I also had no means to keep track of which plants were fertilized and which were not. The game has no tracker or indication that a plant had been fertilized, meaning that I had to manually take note myself. Rune Factory 4, which is part of a spin-off series of Harvest Moon, has an excellent feature which allows the player to keep track of plant growth stats. When the magnifying glass is selected, players can see plant health and other stats on a plot of land. This is nifty and convenient. The second, and what had the most potential to be a fun way of increasing profits, is selling mutated crops. Crop mutations differentiate the Lost Valley from all the other Harvest Moon games developed by Marvelous. Because no other game in the series has explored this mechanic in depth, the Lost Valley had the chance to make this the defining feature of the game, but misses the mark because it doesn't transparently tell players how mutations work. Thus, players spend a frustratingly large amount of time trying to create new mutations through pure guesswork. Mutations are variant crop types that are sometimes spawned from base crops. For example, strawberries can sometimes spawn white strawberries if the right conditions are met. New species of plants can also be discovered through mutations, like squash, which is mutated from pumpkins. There are 6 factors involved in creating mutations. They are seed type, season, elevation of land, soil type, fertilizer, and crop health. How do you know which combination of seed, season, soil types, and fertilizers are involved in creating a specific mutation that you need to finish in NPC's request? The answer is you don't. Nowhere does the game provide hints, recipes, or records of how many total mutations there are, how many total you have found, and what conditions are needed to recreate the mutations you discovered. Preferred seasons are not displayed on bags of seeds, which is not helpful since plants can be planted all year round. There are 4 different elevations at which plants can grow, with some plants having no preferred elevation, while others won't grow at all on certain levels of terrain. There are 4 types of soil, which are swampy, grassy, patchy, and dry, that are determined by their proximity to a water source. Lastly, there are roughly 23 different types of fertilizer. Apparently, applying fertilizer once should be enough to trigger mutation, but it is unknown if applying more fertilizer increases the chance of a mutation occurring. I got all this information from extensive online guides and spreadsheets made by fans of the game, and what I just mentioned is only the tip of the iceberg. I do not think I need to say more on this subject except that the Lost Valley not only fails to properly introduce the mutation mechanic to players, but it also does not provide any effective guides, records, or tracking systems that allow players to view their progress and, when necessary, recall how to successfully recreate mutations. On a 3x3 plot of land, 4 out of 9 of my strawberries produced white strawberry variants. I cannot tell you what I did right, and if necessary, I would not be able to produce white strawberries with confidence. At least the Lost Valley allows players to purchase mutated seeds in the shop, but even this came with its own caveat. In order to unlock seeds in the shop, you have to first sell somewhere between 30 to 99 of that particular mutated crop. Because rare mutations are hard to recreate, especially without any guidance from the game, unlocking seeds became a harrowing task for me. In fact, I would hoard all of my newly mutated crops until I had enough to sell in order to unlock seeds in the shop. Many of my mutations still have gone unsold because of this. Additionally, learning that mutations have a chance of spawning their own mutations greatly disheartened me from believing I could ever discover every available mutation. I could search online for how to recreate mutations, however, I do not want to consult an online spreadsheet every time I want to grow something. Call me lazy, but I believe that it should not be necessary to look at outside resources for information that the game should have already provided. So farming is not fun, and mutations are a hassle. What about the other aspects of the game? Farming is a major part of any Harvest Moon game, but it is not the only gameplay feature. Harvest Moon aims to simulate life in a rural farming community, which includes socializing with the townsfolk. In past Harvest Moon games, the townspeople appear in different locations depending on their schedule. For instance, fan favorite Potpourri's schedule is as follows. On Mondays through Saturday during sunny weather, she can be found at the hot springs in the mornings, on her poultry farm in the afternoons, and locked in her home at night, meaning she is unavailable. I have many opportunities to interact with her throughout the day. Also, thanks to calendar reminders for special town events and store hours posted outside her home, at any given moment, I can predict where she will be and seek her out. This becomes especially important if I want to build up enough relationship points to eventually marry her. In the Lost Valley, most villagers are either 1. Standing outside your house waiting to sell you stuff, or 2. Roaming the valley. April, the florist's daughter, works on Wednesdays and Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., giving you only 2 days' opportunity to interact with her. All the other days, she will randomly roam the valley. So, if you enter the valley and she happens to be located on the opposite side, you have to waste in-game time trekking to her location. You can reset her location by exiting and re-entering the valley, but this can become tedious, especially when you realize that the locations for all of the other villagers are also reset. Also, unlike other Harvest Moon games, this game does not have a calendar, which hampers my ability to plan ahead. I have to open the encyclopedia on the bookshelf and individually search for villagers' birthdays. Your character has prophetic dreams that remind you when events or someone's birthday is near, but it's not helpful if I have to navigate multiple menus to find the information I really need. Conversely, the calendar has all the important events and birthdays for that month marked. So at a glance, I will know Potpourri's birthday is on summer 3rd, and I can prepare a proper gift for her which will raise her love and friendship levels. In past Harvest Moon games, giving gifts and talking to NPCs are the primary means to raising their love and friendship levels. Although there may be some variations between the games, typically there are 2 measurements for relationships. Friendship points, which all NPCs have, and love points, which are reserved for eligible bachelors and bachelorettes. Love points are usually displayed in the user interface as a heart, flower, or other visual representation. A black small heart indicates low affection, whereas a big red heart indicates high affection. A great general tip to remember is to gift your bachelor or bachelorette their favorite item on their birthday to receive a large amount of love points. Also, depending on the game, interacting with them on town event days will greatly boost friendship and love points as well. The Lost Valley's approach to NPC and town event scheduling in the form of random character spawn locations, prophetic dreams, and multiple menu navigational screens interfere with my ability to prepare and maximize friendship points and love points. The Lost Valley simply doesn't provide a comprehensive in-game calendar or equivalent replacement. In the Lost Valley, scheduling issues is only one contributor to the existing difficulties of raising friendship and love points. I already mentioned that in traditional Harvest Moon games, giving gifts and talking to NPCs raises FP and LP. The reason this is satisfying is there are visual and mechanic-driven cues that mark your relationship progression. NPC demeanor and dialogue change to reflect their relationship status. Visual cues such as black hearts turning to purple or flowers blooming along the dialogue box serve as a relationship indicator. And in games such as Rune Factory 4, NPCs will occasionally give you items in return. All of these are progression benchmarks. The Lost Valley does away with gift giving because the developers believe giving items every day seems shallow in building a relationship with someone. The developers wanted to focus on building up a meaningful relationship with NPCs. Mechanically, this means you can talk to NPCs every day, but talking does little to increase relationship points. Instead, you must fulfill requests, which is the only time you can give gifts. Fulfilling enough requests will unlock special events and greatly advance relationship points. Allow me to backtrack a little. Remember when I said scheduling was an issue and mutations are a hassle to spawn? Here's the kicker. I can only receive and complete requests for April when she works on Wednesdays and Thursdays. If I receive a request on Thursday but complete it on Friday, I still have to wait until next Wednesday to turn in the request. During that time, April will be wandering the valley, but talking to her outside her work hours will not finish the request. One of the worst type of requests are those that require mutations. In fact, one of the first requests you receive in the game is for a mutation that will take at least one in-game year to complete. By the way, I never completed this request. Needless to say, requests, especially those that involve mutations, greatly slow relationship progress. Also, relationship indicators such as dialogue change is not as robust, because NPCs inhabiting the Lost Valley seem to have sparse dialogue trees. Dialogue in Harvest Moon games will inevitably be repeated because there are only so many things an NPC can say, especially in early game when they don't have an established relationship with you. However, since relationship advancement is slower in this game, and NPCs have shorter lines, their sparse dialogue trees are more noticeable. The culmination of all of these relationship grievances is reflected in how the Lost Valley handles the Harvest Sprites. Harvest Sprites are a group of mythical creatures that can help with watering, harvesting, and caring for animals. In previous games, before you can employ them, you have to raise their friendship levels to a certain point. And Friends in Mineral Town, you can dictate how long they work and what chore they do on the farm. It may take a while to gain their trust, but when you do it, it's very rewarding. By endgame, my 7 sprites did all of the farm work for me. And I mean all of it, while I fished, mined, played with my dog on the beach, and focused on wooing my bachelorette. The Lost Valley throws a wrench into this relationship building for the sprites. First, sprites are slowly unlocked through in-game story progression, so many are unavailable at the start of the game. Second, each sprite has one particular task that they do. For instance, Dewey, he's the only one that waters plants. Whereas in Friends of Mineral Town, I can tell any of the 7 sprites to water my fields. Third, sprites can only work every other day, Monday through Friday. So at most, sprites can work 3 out of the 7 days of the week. In Friends of Mineral Town, they are available for work every day, except holidays. 4. You can only raise their friendship levels while they work, meaning at most I have 3 chances during the week to raise their friendship points. If they finish before you talk to them, you will not receive friendship points. In Friends of Mineral Town, you can talk and give gifts to them in their hut or while they work. It doesn't matter. 5. They are generally not helpful. I would be able to manage more crops if Dewey will just water them. In the beginning, he only waters 4 to 6 crops, and with limited opportunities to raise his friendship points, at 40 hours into the game, I find that he still only waters between 9 to 12 crops. Whereas in Friends of Mineral Town, I can have those sprites water my entire field. There was an update released about 4 to 6 months after launch that supposedly improved Sprites' usefulness. However, I did not want to download it because I bought the game the day of launch, and I intended to review it as is back then. One of the features that initially appealed to me when the game was first announced was terrain deformation, or the ability to build or tear down the terrain. In past Harvest Moon games, you had the ability to customize your farm, but nothing to this extent. This feature would have been a plus for the Lost Valley if not for the restrictive building controls, limited storage space, and awkward camera angles. Building is extremely slow. For instance, in Minecraft, I can build a simple mud hut within a minute of starting up the game. It would take me at least an hour to accomplish the same thing in the Lost Valley. The reason for that is as follows. 1. You can only dig or fill in land in 4 directions. 2. You can only build up or down on land that is next to you. 3. You can only dig down 1 block if you are level with the land. So, if I am standing next to a space that is 1 block deep already, I cannot dig further. 4. You can only fill in land that is 1 block deep or level with you. I wish the Lost Valley would take some cues from Minecraft in its approach to building and destroying terrain. In fact, I had a better farming experience in Minecraft than I did in Harvest Moon: The Lost Valley. It is unfortunate that the first task you are given is to build a staircase to the Harvest Goddess. This took 5 in-game days to accomplish. Another knock against building is limited storage space. You can only carry 99 of one particular item with you. The rest are automatically sent to your storage in your house. However, your house can only hold about 250 max of each item. You cannot raise this limit. 250 pieces of dirt or wood may seem like a lot, but it's not enough resources for big projects. I tried building a multi-tiered garden with a waterfall centerpiece, but I kept running out of materials, prompting me to waste time walking all the way back to my house to retrieve more items. I quit the project about 25% into it. Last is the camera. The camera gets stuck in odd places and it's hard to maneuver, especially when you are surrounded by high terrain. So, after building the initial staircase and experimenting with other terrain projects, I stopped interacting with terrain entirely. I would only interact with the terrain when story quests dictated it. Past Harvest Moons typically have little narrative, if any at all. The narrative serves as a launching point into the game with a few benchmarks for progression. In Harvest Moon: A Wonderful Life, you have to marry by the end of the first year, whereas in other Harvest Moon games, there is no time frame for marriage. The story in The Lost Valley tries to be more engaging by forcing immediate goals upon the player. The valley the player wandered into is stuck in perpetual winter. You are tasked by the Harvest Moon Goddess to restore the season by completing a series of requests. This is what I have been building up towards in my discussion of the Lost Valley. Okay, so number 1. Mutations are difficult to achieve and replicate. Number 2, profit yields and cash flow are low. Number 3, building relationships, farming, completing requests, and deforming the terrain are all slow processes with no way of improving their speed. So, by the time I restored spring, it was already summer. By the time I restored summer, it was already fall. By the time I restored fall, it was already winter. It took 40 hours, and that's 1 in-game year, to experience a season that was not winter. And do you know what the first day of spring brought? It heralded a fog so dense I could only see a few feet in front of me. In fact, fog in the Lost Valley is despised by the Harvest Moon community, and I didn't even know this was a problem until 40 hours into the game. That was the first time I put the game down. I have since occasionally turned the game back on, despite its flaws, to power through perpetual winter so I can experience how the game was meant to play in other seasons. However, time and time again, it's been hard to plow through the early game portion. 40 hours of snow-covered lands with no wild animals and the same background music on repeat is a chore to play through. And since my replayings, I have picked up on a few minor features. While they are not detrimental to gameplay, they don't add anything to it either. Recipes. Don't bother. You need to complete requests to get them, and in 40 hours all I managed to collect was a recipe for jam. Animal traits. cool concept, but another incomplete feature. Animals can gain traits based on what they are fed and how well they are treated. They can also pass traits onto offspring. That's about it. All I have received from cows is milk, so I don't know why traits exist. Mining. Very underwhelming. Just hit a stone in a cave several times until it stops dropping materials. Ranks. By doing activities a certain number of times, you gain ranks. Ranks are empty accomplishments. It would be nice if ranks came with rewards such as money, recipes, crop mutations, or other items, but they don't. The Lost Valley has the potential to be a great game, but unfortunately falls short. Here are some quick suggestions to improve overall gameplay experience. Mutations. Make discovering mutations fun. How can we do this? Well, for one, we will need a journal. Whenever players experiment and find a new mutation, it should be recorded in a journal that players can reference. Also, this journal will detail all the necessary conditions of unlocked mutations. Hints. Add extra dialogue trees where NPCs may drop hints for mutations. For example, April the Florist might give suggestions for new flower mutations as your relationship with her improves. Mutations recipes. Make unlocking more difficult mutations rewards for completing requests. Friendly user interface indicators. When you select a crop, a UI that displays terrain, crop health, fertilizer used, and terrain elevation should be displayed. This way, players are informed of how and under what conditions they are growing crops. Requests. Allow players to receive and complete requests when they talk to NPCs regardless of where they are located in the world. I don't want to wait one in-game week for something I have just completed. Requests involving harvesting mutations should offer hints on how to unlock those mutations. Scheduling. Bring back the calendar or equivalent. Terrain deformation. If the developers insist on keeping the same control scheme, then allow players to select an area of land, for example maybe a 3x3 plot of land, and level the terrain in one button press. The equivalent stamina will be subtracted from the player's stamina bar. This saves time and helps with building on terrain. If tool upgrades are the way of the dinosaurs, then allow players to grow, water, and harvest crops through irrigation methods. This may take a separate video to fully explain. Animal traits. The system is already in place for traits. It's just cool. Just expand on it, make it more relevant. I like this idea. It's just a shame that it is very underutilized. And other minor details. List season preference on bags of seeds. List a more in-depth explanation of different fertilizers and their uses when they are selected. Make cooking recipes more abundant in early game, and if possible, allow players to experiment in the kitchen. And lastly, incorporate a weather vane, TV broadcaster, or equivalent for weather predictions. These changes will go a long way to improve the overall gameplay experience of The Lost Valley. This review discussion was 3 years in the making, and boy am I glad that I finally got it done. Since the game had come out, it now has a sequel. While it tries to fix some of the problems of The Lost Valley, some of the major issues I had with the game still exist. Overall, there are just too many obstacles, hurdles within the game that prevent them from becoming the great games I know they can be. If I have to grade this, I'd give it maybe 1 potpourri out of 5. I just feel like they still haven't reached their full potential. But that's about it. Thank you for sticking through this very, very long video. I don't really have a proper send-off. Well, until next time.